Welcome to Top 5, a show where we count things down from number 5 to number 1, and here is the best thing about Top 5. We get so many emails with suggestions, we never have to come up with our own ideas on this show. This week, from one of our listeners, Top 5 movies with bad endings. Top 5 movies with bad endings. Now, they're not saying Top 5 bad movies. These could be really, really good movies that just have horrible endings. Or they could just be horrible movies that also have a horrible ending. But I think the person is going with the movies that are good but have a crap ending. Mm-hmm. And my number 5, it's one of those that Matthew likes because it's got the manic pixie dream girl in it.
Oh, I love those.
And it tells the tale of a boy and a girl who fall in love, and they're together for 500 days.
Oh,
and then at the end, they break up.
Oh, no.
That girl's name was Summer. And they break up. And so it's a love lost kind of story, and everything's fine until our hero meets a new girl, and her name is Autumn. 500 Days of Summer.
Dun, dun, what a crappy ending.
Yeah, it's such a cute little movie. And then it's like, oh, hey, everybody, you know how the name of the show is 500 Days of Summer? Hey, here's my new girl. Yeah. Her name's Autumn. And then winter. And then, hey, we got to date spring sometime in 6 months from now. So,
this is my new girlfriend, Discontent. She comes after winter.
Yes. So my number 5, 500 Days of Summer. Rodrigo, what do you have for number 5?
My number 5 is not a great movie, but I was there are parts of it that I really enjoyed, and I was just very disappointed by the ending, and that's The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I'm not disappointed by the fact that they went there, right? It's like, if you have Gwen Stacy in your movie, you're just looking for that scene to happen at some point. That's not the problem. The problem is that Peter grieves for her, gets over it, and gets back in the saddle in 5 minutes after it happens. 5 minutes of movie in this like very fast sort of collage of Peter being sad, and then just so that they can basically launch you into the next movie. And I thought, it's like, now we know that a third movie was just never going to happen.
Right.
But how interesting would it have been to end that movie on a down note? That movie had other structural problems, but to structure it so that there is, Gwen Stacy dies and Peter's not over it, but, maybe you can leave it on like a hopeful note of like, well, maybe he feels responsible, but he's gonna like do something about it or whatever. Like, you can give a down, you can end something in a sadly and still leave it open for something to happen afterwards. Obviously the obvious clear example is Empire Strikes Back, right? It's like the heroes are scattered, but they all made it out, and it's like nobody knows if things are going to go well or not, but it's also not a crap sack, and it doesn't and also the movie doesn't say, but everybody's going to be back together, and then like send you off like that. So yeah, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, a movie with a lot of flaws, one of which is the that ending. Also, a lot of great scenes. Like, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was actually solidly 50-50 for me. There's like a lot of funny, cute things in it, and there's also just like awful, terrible, unwatchable stuff in it.
All right, there you go. Matthew, what do you have for number 4 or 5? I'm sorry.
My number 4 we'll get to in a minute, but my number 5 is, first of all, when you come into my number 5, you have to have kind of a set piece. I want to give you just sort of an idea of where I come into this. My number 5 is derived from a comic book. So, points in its favor, but that comic book is a Mark Millar joint. So, balancing points were kind of now at a negative. And I didn't enjoy the comic, which points against it, but I really kind of enjoy the work of some of the actors in it. And I feel like the director has some guts to him. And there's a Colin Firth in it, and there's a Samuel L. Jackson in it, and there's a Michael Caine in it. And I watch anything with Michael Caine in it. He's bloody brilliant. He is. So thank you, by the way, for all of the naughty and angry letters you're going to write to Stephen. I apologize for the inconvenience. But when I sat down to watch Kingsman: The Secret Service, I was struck by a couple of things. One, it's really kind of a by-the-numbers spy movie, which is fine. And it has some big Mark Miller elements, and it has some modern set pieces to kind of jazz it up and give the James Bond stuff just a little tweak and make it feel good. And the main character is, he's charismatic enough. But at one point, about 3/4 of the way through the film, he discovers that, I think it's the Princess of Sweden, is in the villain's lair, and he's like, if I save you, do I get a kiss? And the Princess of Sweden says, and I'm paraphrasing, if you save me, you can stick your gugus in my geschmoigity. And he raises his eyebrow and looks to the camera, and I'm like, okay, it's a crass joke. Movie ends, saves the day, goes back to the prison, does not let the Princess of Sweden out of the prison, goes into her prison cell, and the last thing we see is his handler turning off the feed from his little spyglass thing, which is clearly him about to, this poor woman who's been trapped in prison. This villain stole her and imprisoned her, and he is literally going to take her up on her Stockholm Syndrome offer to stick his gugus in her geschmoigity. And that moment is so crass and so dumb and flat. I mean, that is sexist. That is some sexist bullcrap. And it really did flatten any of the peaks that I might have had in the film. Because again, there are some really fun moments, and there's, Colin Firth murdering 50 people to the sounds of Lynyrd Skynyrd. So that's like 3 things I like right there. There's Colin Firth and Lynyrd and Skynyrd. But that ending is just so bad. And it's a fillip. It's a little joke. It's a little throwaway line that comes after the big dumb climax where, we're pretty sure it's Barack Obama gets killed or almost gets killed, or I don't know. But I was so put off by that moment that I really, slapped myself in the forehead and said, stupid, you forgot it's a Mark Miller joint. And that is one of the worst endings. My number 5 worst ending, Kingsman: The Secret Service.
All right. Very cool. Here we swing back around into our number 4s. And this movie has some high points because it's kind of a thriller, and it's got some cool jumpy moments in it. And then the end happens and everyone's expected to batter up. And then you really start to think about how dumb the ending of Signs is because suddenly you realize the whole premise of the movie becomes stupid based on the fact that the ending reveals that these aliens are deathly allergic or will die if you splash them with water. And I got to be the alien overlord here just going, yeah, that planet's 70% covered with water, and it rains in most of the places. And yeah, sure, let's just land there in Ohio or wherever the heck that the story takes place because, they're not irrigating their crops. What could go wrong? And all the other dumb alien underlings are like, yes, Your Highness. Oh, that's a brilliant idea, Your Highness. Mm. But Signs 4, where it's just like, batter up and you just splash the aliens with water and then they go away in the end. That's a really dumb ending to a movie that had some moments until you realize the whole premise of the movie is stupid. My number 4, Signs, a movie with a really bad ending.
Is that Bill Paxton?
No, that is Mel Gibson, isn't it? No.
Yep.
Yeah, Mel Gibson in that movie.
Which one
Mel
has
Gibson,
Bill Paxton?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah. I don't know. I think you're thinking of Aliens.
No, I'm not thinking of Aliens. I'm thinking of Frailty, maybe. I don't know. Never mind.
Well, Rodrigo, what do you have for number 4?
My number 4 is probably going to be contentious because I think a lot of people like it.
We will physically fight you, Rodrigo.
Yes, even with its what I consider to be terrible ending. And that is No Country for Old Men.
Mm.
Oh.
And listen, well, I'm probably going to get some like, well, you just didn't get it, man. And listen, probably. But I think I get it. I think I get this idea that It's like, hey man, it's like you can't just wrap everything neatly with a bow at the end of 2 hours. Real life isn't like that. And I get it. If No Country for Old Men is trying to make us feel like losing a person actually does, in that if somebody dies and it seems to be before their time, like it sure feels like an abrupt ending to something good instead of something that is like neatly and fulfillingly put together. But it just seems weird. It seems weird to kill your point of view character, off screen, and it seems weird for this guy to just kind of wander away. And it's like, well, who knows what happened to any of these characters that the movie spends a lot of time making us care about, either being terrified of or being interested in what they do and whether they're going to be able to play both sides without dying. Spoiler alert, they don't. So yeah, I just like it's. I don't like. I think there's a way to make a movie that makes you feel bad about your point of view character dying and the bad guy getting away. It is not the point of view character dying and the bad guy getting away thing that bothers me. It's the fact that it played the way it played. There's got to be a way to do that without it just feeling like, well, I guess was there going to be a sequel to this? I don't know. Anyway, No Country for Old Men, my number 4.
Awesome.
That movie just kind of rolls off the end of the pier, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. It's like I have this idea. I never saw it in the theaters, but I have this idea like you're sitting there watching the movie, and 2/3 of the way through, they just turn the lights on you, and it's like, it's over.
It's what Eddie Izzard refers to as that sort of feeling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which also appears in my number 4 movie with a bad ending. Unlike my number 5, which was based on the work of a creator who I have a contentious relationship in a bad way, or with whom I suppose I should say. My number 4 is based on the work of a creator with whom I have a contentious relationship in all the best ways. His first film used to be on TV all the time when I was a kid, and it gave me nightmares, and it probably made me the person that I am today, or was at least one of the major forces, I think, that turned me into the terrible, horrible little man that you know. But when George Romero made his second film, Dawn of the Dead, I was like, this is great. This is amazing. This is cool. And so in 2004, when they said, hey, we're going to remake Dawn of the Dead, I said, yeah. I mean, it could totally suck. I'll still have the original, but think of Dawn of the Dead done with a big budget and special effects and an actual director. And they gave us 2 of those 3 things. Mm-hmm. But when you get into 2004's Dawn of the Dead, directed, and I use the term loosely, by Zack Snyder, you discover 3 important facts. 1, Sarah Polley is just amazing. You could put Sarah Polley in a room reading the alphabet backwards, and it would be entertaining. And 2, this James Gunn kid who wrote the thing definitely has something going for him. It is not, however, endings, because when you get to the end of Dawn of the Dead, and, spoilers, Dawn of the Dead takes place during a zombie apocalypse. What? It's one of those movies where, most of the characters in it are dead guys. But as we slowly kill everybody on the film in a little bit in terrible ways, and, we meet our stock characters. There's the Wall Street jerk, there's the doting dad, there's the goofy girl, and there's the smart nurse lady, and there's the tough cop guy who takes command and takes charge, by the way, played by Ving Rhames. Really, really good stuff. And you get to the end of this film, and they're like, okay, well, they've been holed up in a shopping mall, spoilers. They're like, okay, we're going to make a run for it. They make a run for it. And the movie ends kind of ambiguously, which I love. And that's, a very Romero thing. And then we get to the credits. And Snyder chose to intersperse the credits with little bits of home video film from a camera that the characters had. So as the credits are going, you're like, okay, I have this solid ending. I have this moment, big romantic moment. I have a big hero thing. I have all this stuff, and they get on this boat, and they're going off onto this island where theoretically they're going to be fine. The original Dawn of the Dead ends roughly the same way. It ends with an ambiguous sort of ambiguity to it. And that's the best kind of ambiguity, because you don't want that certain ambiguity. That sentence made no sense at all. So just play along. But you get to the end of this movie, and in the closing credits, they intersperse little scenes that are fun at first. And then they start getting less fun. And then they completely undermine the ending of the movie. They gave us an ending that worked. And then they stuck little Easter eggs in the closing credits that killed the mood, that killed the ending of the film, and really sent me away with a bad taste in my mouth. So now, Dawn of the Dead is a movie that if I catch it on cable, I'll sit and watch. But as soon as we get to that final scene, we fade to black, and then you get the terrible music by Disturbed coming up. I'm like, okay, we're done. We're out. You have to end it there, just like Phoebe's mom ended Old Yeller with the happy kids and the happy dog before they ever had to put him in the corn crib. Because if you watch the closing credits of Dawn of the Dead from 2004, it will ruin everything that you just sat for 96 minutes and watched.
There you go. My number 3, Planet of the Apes. Now, I'm not talking about the good Planet of the Apes, where Charlton Heston discovers that that was our planet.
The Rod Serling one. Yeah.
What I'm talking about is that horrible, was it 2001 Marky Mark version, where Marky Mark defeats the Planet of the Apes and beats the head gorilla guy. And then he goes back up into space.
By Beetlejuice, right?
I believe so. And then he goes back up into space, and then he lands back on the planet. And then did he go back in the past? And then the whole planet is all apes, and the general's head is on top of Abe Lincoln's body, and
Abraham Gibbon.
That movie, that ending makes no sense. They don't even try to explain what happened. Did he jump into a parallel timeline? Was he actually in the past instead of the future? I mean, that movie makes no sense. And people walk out of that theater going, oh yeah, there was Charlton Heston as one of the apes. That was kind of cool. And, you know, that was, I guess, kind of neat that they did some Planet of the Apes remakes, but man, that ending, what does it mean? And I'll be completely honest with you. After watching that Planet of the Apes, I have refused to watch any Planet of the Apes movie after that. And apparently all the other Planet of the Apes movies have nothing to do with the Marky Mark movie. But I don't care. They fudged up that franchise for me. And I will never watch Planet of the Apes ever again because of that. So Planet of the Apes is a pretty good movie. What a horrible ending. Did you guys understand the ending of that movie?
No, I don't remember it.
Sucked. Does that count?
I'm still today. I'm just like, wait. He crashes back to Earth. He crashes into the Lincoln Memorial. He wanders up the steps, sees the gorilla head, freaks out, turns around. All the cops pull up, and they're all gorillas. And then the movie ends, and it's like, what?
Somewhere on the interwebs, there is this long and involved explanation of how it's all there in the movie, apparently, that somehow when he went back in time, the villain went back further in time or some such nonsense. Just, no, just don't. If you have to make me a diagram and 5 pages of explanation of how the last 2 minutes of your movie went, I'm not going.
Listen, if you're watching Donnie Darko or you're watching Primer and you need a diagram to show how everything loops around and how the time travel works, I'm perfectly okay with that. Okay? But Planet of the Apes was a movie that did not need a diagram. It needed Marky Mark to go home and to run down the streets screaming, raving, we've got to be aware of the Planet of the Apes. And everyone locks him up at the end. And then you pan across the street from the psych ward to the zoo, and you see some gorillas just sitting in the cages looking across at him. And you know that they're plotting to take over the world. That's how you end a Planet of the Apes movie.
And the baby chimpanzee says, Mama!
Yeah, exactly. Mama! Exactly. And Cornelius goes, well, there you go. You've ruined it again, Ursa. And the movie credits roll. Planet of the Apes, my number 3. That made no sense either. Just roll with it. Rodrigo, what do you have for number 3?
My number 3 is actually a movie that also fudged up a franchise for me. And that's X-Men The Last Stand.
Mm.
And to be clear, is not so much that X-Men: The Last Stand is a decent movie with a bad ending. It's kind of a bad ending to a movie trilogy, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
This whole movie is sort of that bad ending. It really turned me off of the X-Men for a long time. I think the next X-Men movie that I actually sat down to watch at all was Days of Future Past.
Which also probably ruined the X-Men franchise for you.
No, because X-Men Days of Future Past erases
erases
X-Men:
all
The
of
Last
it. That's
Stand.
right.
Yeah,
That's
it does.
It
That one actually ends well.
Yeah. And if they had just stuck with that, that would have been good. But then they went and made X-Men Apocalypse, which people complain about. I haven't seen it because I learned my lesson. Like after X2, like X2 is like, oh yeah, the Phoenix Rises is like, well, that sure is ominous. Bye. That's what I should have done. So with Days of Future Past, I was like, well, this sure ties up the X-Men with a nice little bow. There's still some dangling plot threads that they're probably not going to address, and some inexplicable dumb things as to like the current iteration of Wolverine's backstory, but it doesn't matter. Basically, they did exactly what they needed to do. They erased the worst movie and left it ambiguous as to whether everything prior actually happened, so you can construct your own headcanon, as it were. And then so when they were like, now X-Men Apocalypse, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just not going to watch that. So yeah, for me, bad ending times, X-Men: The Last Stand.
There you go. Matthew, what is your number 3?
Well, I would say that my number 3 fudged up a movie franchise, but I'll be honest with you, it's the Final Destination franchise. So you're not really, I mean, this is not Shakespeare. The whole point of Final Destination is really watching obnoxious people in situations where you want to see what sort of Rube Goldberg device, death, dismemberment, and or beheading comes to them. Final Destination movies have, a scene where a guy accidentally kills a woman by knocking over a chair because the house is on fire, but it hits a knife that fell into her chest by accident earlier in the film, and dubbity-bibbity. It also has the moment where 2 pretty cheerleaders are trapped in a malfunctioning tanning bed, and it's just, you don't want any part of that. But Final Destination 5, the final destination, which again, I don't know, you can't call something like that penultimate destination. That's ridiculous. And we're up to Final Fantasy number 56, so you can kind of get away with it. But in Final Fantasy number 5, the whole schmagegi starts over. People almost die on a bridge. They discover that they are being killed by a vengeful, invisible spirit of death. And this time it's super creative and probably almost funny in some of these cases. There's some really, really black humor deaths in here that are kind of likable, and all the characters are kind of likable. And there's something about this film, though, as you watch it, that just feels off. This is a film that came out in the year 2011. And this is a film that you have these teenage kids running around, and about halfway through, I'm like, Steven always says that a movie can be ruined by cell phones.
Yep.
And this one would be over if they just use their cell phones. And I realize they don't have cell phones. And I realize nobody has their cell phones. And as the movie goes on, I'm like, there are things about this that it just feels off. And you get to the end of the movie and you discover why. And by the way, if you don't want to be spoiled for Final Destination 5, don't listen now. If you really are worried about being spoiled for Final Destination 5, I can get you a number of a man who will listen to you. But at the end of this film, we see our characters get on an airplane, and we see a retelling of the first scene of the first Final Destination movie, and we discover that this thing is a flashback. Final Destination 5 is actually a prequel to the original Final Destination movie from like 1999 or 2001 or some such. And so you get to the end of this movie and you're like, all I wanted to see was pretty people getting killed by flying wrenches and things. I'm not necessarily here for this bizarre, involved kind of, Scavulo hell revolving door kind of thing. But you get to the end of that, and on the one hand, I'm like, that's kind of cool. That's like, yeah, I'm sort of into that. And then on the other hand, I realize that it's nothing. I mean, it's literally nothing. There's really no craft to that. And even though they did kind of set it up, and you go through that whole film, everybody dies. It's not like anybody learns an important lesson, or, love's lost and heart's broken and people put together. It's not like Love in the Time of Cholera or something. It's basically a slasher flick, only the slasher is invisible death. And coming back around to the beginning of it is really great because it ties the whole Final Destination trilogy, the oeuvre, if you will, the entire Final Destination mythos into one big bow. But then it made me sad that there was a Final Destination mythos, and B, a part of me that kind of cared. And so at the end of Final Destination 5, I just went away sad and went off and watched the latest Paranormal Activity film. So, you take the good, you take the bad.
All right. We are up to number 2. Or down to number 2, depending on which way your list goes.
Down.
Yeah.
Down.
Yeah. Let's talk about Grease.
I knew it was coming.
The country?
No, Grease, the movie with John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. Now, this movie takes place in 1959, but the movie came out in like 1970, 78?
77?
78.
Something like that.
And so all the styles and everything have to fit with that 70s vibe, including the music, which is a little bit more disco-y than 1959. We can look past all of that. We can even look past the whole Sandy, you must turn into kind of a trashy girl in order to get the guy that you want.
Change everything about yourself to win the man you love.
Yeah, and Danny Zuko doesn't have to do anything. I mean, we can see past all of that if we want, right?
We can even see past Stockard Channing being 37 years old and playing a
high school kid, right? But the thing that makes this movie horrible is when,
get ready, kids,
in the middle
Steven's Grease riff yet.
In the middle of a carnival, a car just comes cruising down, and Danny and Sandy get into that car and they fly away into the heavens. And she just waves back at everybody, and everybody's waving back, and no one's like going, holy crap, we've got flying cars. It's 1959. This is the future. Nobody is freaking out that Danny Zuko and the rest of the Zukettes cobbled together a flying car in the garage at Rydell High. Oh, I'm sorry. They're the T-Birds. Sorry.
The T-Birds. Walk like a T-Bird.
What a horrible ending. Now, look, I'm not going to spend this time talking about the conspiracy theory that this is really all Sandy's last dying memory because she actually drowned.
Right.
I'm not going to talk about that. But a flying car at the end of your High School Musical is like a horrible, bad ending.
I wish more movies ended with a flying car.
Repo Man?
Yeah, it's like...
Repo Man ends with a flying car?
Gran Torino. Yeah. He gets shot, he gets into his car, just flies off into the sky.
Formula
Chitty
One?
Bang Bang ends with a flying car.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, flying car? You're right.
Depending on how you define it.
But see, here's the thing. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the man invents a flying car. That's the whole point of that movie. Repo Man. Right. The whole point of the car flying around at the end is because of the aliens in the back of the trunk. Grease, flying car, just dumb. It's like whoever wrote this thing. Let me look here. Who wrote this movie? Produced by, screenplay by Bronte Woodard. Bronte Woodard, or Bront Woodard. I think he got to the end and he's like, all right, I've totally ruined this nice girl, Sandy. Danny doesn't change at all. I got nowhere else to go. And he flips through his stack of random cards that he puts together to make up his movie. And he pulls out flying and car. And he's like, that's it. Musical number, flying car. Everybody waves at the end.
I really think that it wasn't that. I gotta imagine that they shot that ending or the ending up, to that final song, and they showed it to an executive, and the executive is like, it needs something like punchy, something to get you like, it has to end on like something crazy. And it's like, well, like what? It's like, I don't know, a giant spider, a flying car,
flying spider,
ghost.
Here's the thing. No, but here's the thing. They could have just driven out of the parking lot, driven down the big Highway 1 of California with the clouds and everything on the horizon, and they're turning back and waving into the parking lot. They could have ended that way. They could have ended, if they really wanted the car to fly, they could have just driven the car right off the edge of a cliff, and that would have been a better ending.
I have the answer.
All right.
And it's one of the few times, and the people who listen to this show know that occasionally I do delve into what I call universal string field theory, which says that any character played by any actor is the same character, no matter which movie that actor is in. And here's why it works. Danny and the T-Birds have a shop teacher named Mrs. Murdoch. Mrs. Murdoch helps them build the car that they use in the race sequence against the evil guy, who is evil because he has bad skin. And I don't take that personally.
Is a sign of evilness.
Yeah. That woman is played by Alice Ghostley. Alice Ghostley is best known.
Yeah, Ghost.
No, she is best known for playing Esmeralda the Witch, Samantha's cousin on Bewitched. So this is the thing. Before she became Samantha's cousin, it was 1959. She was hiding in normal human society, but Esmeralda was bad with her powers, so she accidentally built a flying car. And what we don't see is a scene after Grease, where up in the upper atmosphere, Sandy and Danny freeze and starve to death because they don't know how to get down. So the reason that car flies is because their shop teacher was Esmeralda, and she accidentally imbued it with some of the magical power that she gets from her mother and Dora.
I would rather go with this is Sandy dying on the beach, and these are her weird memories.
I will do literally anything to fight off that particular storytelling trope.
Yeah, I don't think you can. It's in the zeitgeist now, right? Isn't that what they say? They say it's in the zeitgeist. It's an interesting theory, but I don't go for it necessarily. But my goodness,
you'd rather murder an 18-year-old girl than admit to the existence
You just were talking
witches.
About Final Destination, where pretty high school kids getting whacked off.
That was a previous entry.
That's a pretty good summation. That's a pretty good summation of Final Destination. Attractive people get whacked off. Take it as you will.
Yeah. So put that on your list of best band names for this episode of Top 5.
Rodrigo, what do you have for number 2?
My number 2 is a movie that I was very expecting a lot from, and I feel delivered on a lot of it. And through no fault of its pacing or special effects or anything, ended up with sort of the wrong ending, and that's Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah, definitely.
In Scott Pilgrim comics, you have a lot of time to figure out why Scott and Ramona should end up together. And you can still disagree with that because,
they make a case for both sides of that argument.
They really do. They're both kind of, grown-up babies, and they're just bad at things, and whatever. But 100% Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the movie, Scott should have ended with Knives. The whole movie plays so that he gets back together with Knives, and then he doesn't. And from what I understand, that was the original ending that they had planned, and then they made a call to bring it in line with the source material. But they didn't go back and reshoot 2/3 of the movie to make that ending make more sense.
Because doesn't he and Knives fight the last video game together, and it's like, oh, that's a perfect pairing.
Yeah, basically
Knives together defeat Gideon. Yeah.
Yeah, he starts out and he's dating Knives, and he's a bad boyfriend to Knives, and he basically leaves her for this other girl, and then eventually it all comes together, and the things that that Scott did with Knives come back around and become positive things, whereas his relationship with Ramona really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And Ramona just kind of comes across as someone with a lot of baggage, who is like isn't ready for another relationship, which is basically what she's been telling him from the beginning. Like, this is not good. I'm not ready for this, blah, blah, blah. Like, the way that the movie's set up, it really, really makes it seem like even after he went through all of this, is like, how much better is it that he went through all this stuff with this other girl? It made him a very better person. And then he's like, oh, now I can be a good boyfriend
right.
to this girl who is willing to still give me a chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no, just, magic door.
Mm-hmm.
What a shame. What a shame.
They wasted so much potential in that film because, I mean, the books are so good.
They really did.
So good.
I really wish that they had just. I really wish they had just overreached and made two movies. Like, been like, okay, this is great. We're gonna shoot two movies at once, because they had to crunch the book so hard to make this one movie. If they had done two movies, it would have given them a little bit more room, and maybe a little bit more room to have that ending.
Well, remind me, because my timeline's a little off. Didn't the movie come out before the final book came out?
It started production before the final book came out, but I think by the time the movie came out, the final book was out.
Okay.
The final book was out, but I don't believe that they knew how the final book ended when they made the movie.
Right. They started production before it was written. Or finished anyway. So they had to extrapolate a la Game of Thrones.
A la Game of Thrones. Brian Lee O'Malley, what are you working on these days?
Not Girl.
Oh yeah, right. That's right. Yep. All right, we are. Oh, gee, are we already? Matthew, you've got a number 2.
I've got a number 2.
All right,
and it is a genuine number 2. And I'm glad that this wasn't good movies with bad endings, because this movie is not good. It was never good. This is a movie that, and this is a legend behind the film. I'm going to tell you a little bit of Hollywood stuff right now. This movie was half made by one creator, then they ran out of money and they stopped. And another creator he needed a second movie to play as a double feature to get his movie released. And I presume this is like Grindhouse drive-in theater stuff, where his film wasn't quite long enough, so they needed 2. So he bought this half a film, added some more scenes and added dialogue. And of course, in some cases had to hire new cast members. So some of the cast members just sort of up and change halfway through it. But it's a story of a monster, sort of. An astronaut named Frank, who is in a spaceship coming down to Earth and suddenly disappears. And then they see a giant radioactive monster. Oh my God. And this is how you kick into 1965's science fiction horror number 2, Monster A Go-Go. Mm-hmm. This is a movie that is so bad that the Mystery Science Theater guys couldn't do that much with it. I mean, they had to really work. And there are points in this film where even watching the wonder that is Joel and the Bots cannot entertain you, because it's just so bad. And there's one legendary moment in this film, doesn't have anything to do with the ending, but I want to share it anyway. Characters are sitting there, they're in an office sequence, and the phone is ringing. And the phone is clearly somebody going, bring, 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 just off screen. But as this movie ends, we get to a point where the monster is in the sewers under the city, and the scientists are chasing him down, and they run around a corner, and he's gone. And then they get a telegram that says, oh yeah, they found him in the North Atlantic. There was never a monster at all. And the last line of the films is, you have witnessed the line being shaved even thinner. But is the menace still with us? And the question is yes. The answer is absolutely yes, because whoever came up with this is still alive, and that's just unfair. Movie just stops, just ends. There was never anything. And it makes the whole thing pointless, which kind of kills your twist ending. I mean, a twist ending, even a bad twist ending, you can go, okay, well, yeah, she thinks it's 1876, but they're really in a wildlife preserve. It's not a good twist, but it's a twist that at least justifies some of the gymnastics that movie went through, not to keep beating on poor M. Night Shyamalan. But this movie is just, it's like nobody cared. It's like the first creative team couldn't care to finish it, and the second creative team was like, we just need 68 minutes of this thing. Let's just slap something on, and when we run out of film, we're done. And that's just so depressing to me as someone who once actually, wanted to make movies. And as someone who watches a lot of movies, you can't end something and literally say to the people watching, yeah, you never should have cared about this. There was no giant. There was no monster. There was nothing for these guys to follow. Bye. Enjoy our feature film. Just so sad. Now I'm depressed. For my number 2, Monster A Go-Go.
Oh, wait. I'll make you even more depressed with my number 1.
Okay.
Are you ready? This is a TV movie.
Oh, no.
But this is a 2-parter TV movie.
Oh, no.
It's a TV movie that everyone had high hopes for because it was based on a book by a well-known horror author.
Oh, no.
It's got frickin' John Boy in it.
Oh, no.
And then someone picks up a stone and slingshots it into the spider's head, and they all go home. I'm talking about It. Which, to be fair, that's kind of how the book ended. But what a stupid letdown of a movie. And a stupid letdown in a book, which, again, I like Stephen King, don't get me wrong, but he has horrible endings to all of his stories. So
he's not a master of endings. Yeah,
I haven't seen the new It, the one that came out 27 years after the original.
Yeah,
but I think it was a CBS. Was it CBS or ABC? I forget.
It was
Matthew.
ABC.
ABC.
It was a movie event. It was
yes.
a miniseries.
Yeah, it was a movie. Yeah, because the first night was the kid's story,
and
then the second night was the adult story, and in the end, they pick up the shiny button. Oh, it's a button, not a rock. And
it was a silver earring.
Button. Yeah, and they shoot the spider in the head, and he's dead, and they all go home. Well, and it's just
he crawls off
really?
To die, and then they rip out his heart. But yeah, it's terrible.
Really? It's okay.
I watched this recently with the widget.
Oh, the John Boy version?
The John Boy version.
Okay.
She was like, I want to go to the movies and see it. Well, I don't have any money. You want to watch the old one? There's an old one? Yeah, it's terrible. Well, of course, that got her attention. So we watched it. In the first half, she's like, is this all just set up? Is this all? Yeah, it is. And then we get to the end, and she's like, so that's it? And I'm like, yes, honey, that is it. And then I told her how the book ended and skeeved her out so bad that she won't talk to me anymore.
How the book ended or how part 1 ended?
How the childhood portion of the book ended.
How part 1 ended. Yes.
Yeah. If you know what I'm talking about, just scream at the top of your lungs and scream and scream and scream.
Put your hands over your ears and just scream and go, that was the worst. How can Stephen King do that?
You probably have, if you're lucky, you have time to sit in the shower rocking and crying for 11 hours before work tomorrow.
He does some good horror and sets up some good horror and tells some good horrific stories. But man, does the ending of It just blow chunks. And that's why it's my number 1 movie with a bad ending.
This may not be the last King on the list.
Oh, it may not be. Let's find out what Rodrigo has at his number 1.
My number 1 is not a Stephen King movie.
Oh, man. I thought we exchanged emails.
What are we supposed to?
I don't read words.
Well,
why can't Rodrigo read?
Which explains why he doesn't have Stephen King on his list.
Oh,
exactly.
Right. No, my number 1 movie with a bad ending is a movie that I love, and I still love it despite its terrible ending. And that is The Matrix. The The Matrix is a movie that redefined a lot of what action movies are and were doing. It's a movie that is both a pow 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 karate chop action movie and also a pretty like pop philosophy. Like, you know, it's a deep movie in its own way. It's actually asking questions of its audience that you might, you know, sit there and think about for a while. What if this is all a whale's dream or something? I don't know. It's like the movie basically ends, and the good guys win, and they've struck a blow against the bad guys, and then Neo makes a phone call and he threatens the bad guys. And he's like, "Yeah, we're coming for you, and you can't keep us down anymore, man." And it's like, great. He hangs up and we get this overhead shot of the city, and then the movie ends forever and nothing else happens.
No, I'm pretty sure there was part where he was like, no, never mind.
Yeah. So what happens immediately after that is we get this overhead shot of the city and we see Neo whiz by.
Because he's like, Superman.
Flying like a Superman does. And it, like, I remember watching that and being like, what? Aww. You know, and it's like, and it's funny because that moment is where I think the Matrix sequels start. Is the very end of the Matrix, and from there on out, it's like a completely different tone to those movies. They're still trying to kind of accomplish the same thing, but the world of the Matrix is small. It's a very small.
Yeah, they got to fit it on one blade server there in the rack of the universe.
I mean, yeah, literally, you know, is like all cities are the same. All people are like subjugated by one intelligence. The world of the Matrix is pretty small, and when they try to expand it in the sequels, it just kind of starts to break down. It's not as interesting. It's not as cool. And as far as I'm concerned, that starts at like the 157th minute or whatever of the Matrix, when Neo takes off flying.
Yeah.
So that's my number one. And it's number one because I keep having to deal with it because I like the Matrix. You know, I'll actually sit down and watch Scott Pilgrim too, but it just is not as bad. You know, I don't have as much invested into the Scott Pilgrim movie as I do into the Matrix because, you know, I was like a teenager when it came out. And I was like, yeah, I want to put on a suit and fight people.
Well, I want to have black clothing and go.
But it also brought up all those cool, the cool philosophical and psychological questions that it brings up are also really cool. Mm-hmm. And then, they decided to stretch their movie making skills a little bit too far.
Yeah,
I mean, ruined long black coats for a whole generation of people.
There's a lot going on in the Matrix, and yeah, it just. I don't know. It is weird because to them it probably seemed like the next logical step. It's like, well, we've already showing him stopping bullets with his brain. Where else? What can we do to like punch this up? It's like, well, him and Trinity him and Trinity can get into a flying car and go off into the sunset. I guess that actually make more sense in the Matrix.
In the Matrix, it certainly would.
Together like Mr. Smith and the other agents.
Well, there's only just one Mr. Smith.
Oh, they're all Mr. Smith.
Me. Yeah. All right, Matthew, what do you got for us, Copper Top?
All right, don't ever call me that again. And second, here's the deal. Anyone who listens to the Major Spoilers podcasts, our entire array of wonderful podcasts, including Critical Hit, which we love, the Major Spoilers podcast, the show you're listening to right now, top 5 and dozens of other amazing shows, all available at majorspoilers.com, is that sometimes we, and by we, I mean the three of us, have themes to which we return and things that really bug us, kind of in the way that Marty McFly hates being called chicken, or the kids from Caper hated hearing the word banana. But for me, Stephen's point about Stephen King not being able to end things is a solid one that has haunted me for years and years and years. and literally years, going back to probably around 1980 or 81, when my friend the Stork, whose father had a collection of Stephen King novels, at that point there were 3 or 4 of them, so only about 50,000 pages, loaned me a couple of these books. And one of them that he loaned me was Skeleton Crew, which is a collection of King books. And it leads with an amazing, it's not really a short story. It's more like a novella or a novelette. It's like scribillion, 150 pages or something. And that story and the movie that sprang from it is called The Mist. It is my number 1. And the reason why is a personal one for me. The Mist is a movie that hurt me in ways that I never thought a movie could hurt me, because I loved the novella, The Mist. The Mist is the story of a man who goes to the store one day and is somehow trapped in the store, surrounded by freaky aliens in this titular mist, and doesn't know what's going on, and nobody really knows what's going on. And it's mostly about human nature in a crisis, which means that there's fighting and people getting shot in the face and people constantly trying to kill each other, even though they should be banding together in the face of adversity. And at the end of the novella, The Mist, and I don't want to give too much away, we have ambiguity. We have an O. Henry, kind of a Twilight Zone Rod Serling thing, where they don't tell us how it happens. They don't tell us what happens after David and his son and a couple of friends get out of the Federated Market. They do not tell us. And it ends with a line that is pretty bad, because first of all, it makes a point that 2 words sound alike when they don't. And second of all, it just sort of stops. But it stops in a way that sometimes you want a story to end. You want a story to not tell you, and then they all escaped into the bright light of a new day. So, flash forward 20 years, Frank Darabont, the guy who did The Shawshank Redemption, which is utterly perfect as far as I'm concerned, solid movie experience, takes one of the better King
so now there is a Stephen King movie that actually has a good ending.
Yeah, and the story has a good ending too. That is the ending from the short story.
But it's not a horror. It's not a horror. That's the thing.
It's not a horror story. It's human horror, but it's not like
all
clowns
the
in the sewers, cars trying to kill you, telekinetic children,
rabid dog.
I don't know how
Haunted
the book
Hotel
ends, but I thought Pet Sematary had an okay ending.
Pet Sematary's book has a similar ending to the movie. The ending of Pet Sematary, though, is another kind of almost ambiguous ending.
Yeah.
The Mist movie, however, ends with David getting out of the market with a couple of friends and his 6-year-old son. And it becomes important that David has a handgun in which there are 3 bullets. And there are 4 people in the truck. And they drive away into the mist. And I'm going to spoiler the end of this whole movie. And I'm going to do this with malice and forethought. So I want you to know, if you don't want to be spoilered on The Mist, first of all, I love you, and that's fine. You can go off and you can do whatever you need to do. Your mother and I support you in your bad choices. But here it is. The Mist ends with them driving out into the night, and it's all misty. And they decide, okay, we're all going to die out here. So David murders his friends and his son. And then he gets out of the car and he says, "Come eat me, bugs." And then, and I am crapping you negative, I swear to you, the cavalry literally rolls in. The army and tanks and flamethrowers come through to save the day. And David is standing there having just murdered, mind you, his only son, his 6-year-old child, 2 of his friends lying dead behind him. And he sees everyone that they left behind in the market, all the people who tortured him and tormented him and maybe tried to kill him, are all riding away on a truck, eating MREs or something, while the military comes in to save the day. And he is now forced to realize that in a moment of panic, he murdered his family 3 seconds too soon. And Frank Darabont, I hate you wherever you are. I hate you, because that ending is so bleak. It is a story that ends in the original fiction with the possibility that they were all killed and eaten by Cthulhian monstrosities from beyond the void. It ends with them probably dying or starving to death somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It ends with them maybe being squashed by a giant dinosaur thing from hell. And it's a better ending. It's a less bleak ending than what we get in the movie. And if your short story originally ends in that weird sort of non-ending territory, it's going to be a hard sell to turn into a movie. I get that. Movies have to have a big kind of climax. You have to have something huge where Sandy and Danny fly off into the sky because of Esmeralda's magic carburetor. You have to have that feel-good moment. You have to have that moment. You know why it's called Grease? Magic Grease. Esmeralda made it, put it in the car. That's why the film's called Grease, Stephen.
You know, Flubber has a flying car, and that movie makes a hell of a lot more sense than Grease.
And you know what else it makes more sense than? The Mist, which is a horrible, horrible movie. It's made by people who should feel bad because their ideas are bad, and they are bad, bad people, with the only exception being anybody that I like in their next work, like the lady who ended up going on and playing the cool girl on The Walking Dead, Carol. Her, I forgive. Maybe I forgive the Punisher, who was the main character. I do kind of forgive.
No, I thought Superboy was the main character.
No, the main character of The Mist is the Punisher.
Oh,
no,
I thought Tom
you're
Welling
thinking
was
of the Fog.
Oh.
And that's a John Carpenter remake, and that's equally. And shut up. And you know what? I also forgive the captain from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, who is the evil lawyer next door. Andre Braugher is in this, and he's amazing with that voice.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah,
but you know what?
Anything he's in, I'm there for.
Yeah, if you watch this movie, first of all, I just spoiled the ending for you, so Merry effing Christmas. But don't watch this movie. But if you do, just stop. Just stop when they drive away from the market and say, ... Stephen King can't end a story.
There you go. Well, Frank Darabont chose to add an ending that didn't need to be added. Which more than likely is my guess. Yeah. My guess is just like Grease and just like Planet of the Apes and just like not Signs. You showed it to a studio exec, and the studio exec was, so what happens?
Well,
do they get eaten?
Do they get eaten?
Did all the aliens die because they're not used to our bacteria, and so they all suffered a horrible flu, and that's why you need to get your children inoculated? Is it all a dream? Yeah. So
you know
what happens?
At the end, you should have the Punisher fly up into the sky with the powers.
Oh man!
After Cypher. And how did Cypher get out of the Matrix if you have to have an operator to get out of the Matrix? Hey. How did he get out of the Matrix to betray them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
I'll tell you how. Magic carburetors that he got from Esmeralda.
Man.
Yeah.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Now you've gotten us all in a bad mood. Thank you, whoever wrote this in.
Listeners.
Now we're on a bad mood because of movies that are okay, but had horrible, bad endings.
Rodrigo's fine. He's just over there.
I'm going to go try to make myself feel better by going to see Titanic or something. Oh, wait. Damn it.
No, you do not talk about the ending of Titanic. That movie ends the way it should have ended.
He could have floated away on the staircase.
You know what? I had as I had one in my also rants, but it just makes me too angry, so I didn't want to get into it.
I had
Mystery Man because I think the movie ends just fine, and then as they're walking away, it's like boing 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 boing.
Hey, I have to listen you're to an asshat, and your song sucks.
I have to listen to All Star for the fifth movie that came out that year.
I had a Dark Knight Rises on my list because Batman's dead, and then the butler finds him alive. What a dumb ending! I would have been happy with Batman blowing himself up.
I removed my number 3 because I did not want, frankly, to enrage Stephen. But if you went back in time, changed reality, and came back to a horrible, altered world where no one you love is who they were, your girlfriend is not the same person,
she's a monkey.
Your parents are completely different people, and also you have a truck, Marty McFly is going to be traumatized. Everything he knows is wrong, and he now has to
but he has the girl and the truck.
But he has to relearn everything in a world of hell. I mean, think about this. He has this truck, but what else does he have?
You're a high school kid, and it's not your senior year. You've got the girl and the truck. That's all you need.
But it's not the same girl. Well, your girlfriend changed into a different girl.
No, in Back to the Future, it is the same girl. It's not until you do Back to the Future 2 where suddenly she turns into Elizabeth Shue, and you're like, what the what? So I would say if you had movies that had bad beginnings,
Elizabeth Shue, I'm not saying I'd be upset. Sorry, but I will say this. I will say only this. Marty comes back to that, and literally the only thing that he has, the only touchstone that he will have in that hellish, freakish world is Doc Brown. And that's just messed up.
Keep in mind, too, that the future, I mean, it's not like he came back and there's a monkey head on the Abe Lincoln Memorial. He didn't come back to that world. He came back to his immediate.
Crispin Glover.
His dad is Crispin Glover.
His mom has lost like 80 pounds and is now like successful. It's got to be creepy. Everything you know about your siblings is wrong.
He comes from a dysfunctional family. You know, he even when he goes back to the future, he's still dysfunctional. So he probably pays spends as little time with his family as he possibly can. So this changes nothing for him. Except now his mom's not going to give him grief about going to the lake with his girlfriend and getting it on until the aliens come and land, and he has to have his doppelganger shoot them so he can go fly off into space and stop the Kodan Armada from invading Earth.
That's a different.
Well, it all kind of works out to be the same movie when you really think about it. And listeners, that's where you come in. You head over to majorspoilers.com, and in the comment section of this episode, you share your top 5 movies with bad endings. We want to read them, so does everyone else, because everyone loves a list, and we will talk with you soon.
This podcast is copyright 2017 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.